"Say it again," Marquita said, her voice steady but sharp. She stood across from him in the private corner of his office, where no assistants lingered, where the city skyline could be ignored, and where everything between them had narrowed down to two people and a truth neither wanted to face. Prince didn't move. His hands stayed on the edge of his desk, grip steady. He met her stare with a cold calm that had once crushed boardroom giants. "You showed up when the numbers exploded. Timing speaks." The silence that followed was not quiet. It pressed, thick. Marquita's expression didn't flinch. She had heard worse, but not from him. "I worked my way here. I earned every dollar. You think I used your son to get closer?" "I think patterns speak louder than words," Prince replied, jaw tight. Melvin didn't mean to stop. He had been walking toward the office to show his father the coding project he finished early. But the sound of Marquita's voice, low, firm, and breaking slightly, froze him. He stayed behind the half-closed door, heart quick. "I was here before your donation numbers went up," she said. "I didn't say you planned it that way," Prince replied, flat. "But the timing worked in your favor, didn't it?" Melvin leaned closer. His throat tightened. Marquita's voice dropped. "You think I smiled at your son because I had an agenda?" Silence again. "Then, Prince, I think people have motives, all of them." Melvin's grip on his tablet slipped. The sound made both adults turn, but neither opened the door. He stepped back, unnoticed, and walked the other way. Faster. Eyes wide, chest heavy. "That was the day I lost the woman who helped me raise the boy I thought was mine." Prince stood by the window hours later, untouched coffee cooling on his desk. The city below kept moving, cabs, calls, decisions. But inside that office, nothing moved. He hadn't followed Marquita when she left. He hadn't called her name. She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. She didn't explain. She walked away like she owed no one anything. And maybe she didn't. She knew the truth before I did. She protected the boy I claimed. She cared in ways I didn't notice until it was too late. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Same suit, same posture, same man. But something had cracked. Something that silence alone couldn't hold together. You don't know how much someone mattered until you speak like they never did. Prince didn't sleep that night. The silence in the penthouse was louder than usual. No hum from Melvin's video calls. No rustle of papers Marquita used to review at the kitchen island. No sound of heels tapping across the marble on her way out. He sat alone on the couch, suit still on, elbows resting on his knees. The DNA folder sat unopened beside him. He had memorized the weight of its truth, yet he hadn't touched the pages again. Melvin didn't speak during dinner. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. The boy's eyes had already changed. Prince stared at the ceiling as the lights dimmed across the city, the kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, it exposes. He shut his eyes. "She didn't take anything from me. I gave it all up when I stopped trusting her, and then, nothing." Black screen. What would you do if the one person who helped you love again walked away because you let suspicion speak louder than truth? Would you fight to explain? Would you let them go quietly? Or would you realize too late that dignity doesn't wait for second chances? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever misjudged someone who showed up when you needed them most. Subscribe to Mr. Victor Storytime for more stories that hold up a mirror to real choices, real growth, and real love. This story is only beginning, and what comes next will change everything. Prince Davison rose at 4:45 a.m. Sharp. No alarms, no hesitation. His morning started with black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and a 20-minute silent review of global market activity from an antique tablet inlaid with steel. It wasn't about the news. It was about control. His penthouse sat 30 stories high in downtown Chicago, walled in glass. No curtains, no distractions. Every angle of the skyline reminded him what he had built, what he protected. At 6 sharp, his car arrived. The driver didn't speak unless spoken to. Inside the vehicle, Prince reviewed financial reports and flagged inefficiencies. No one on his payroll, analyst, executive, or assistant, was safe from correction. By 7:10 a.m., he stepped into the headquarters of Davison Equity Group. Employees straightened, eyes lowered. The elevator rose in silence, and the top floor opened to an office built for intimidation. Dark wood, steel, floor-to-ceiling windows. Meetings ran like surgical procedures. No wasted time. No emotional chatter. A glance from Prince meant change. A pause meant someone had failed. He didn't yell. He didn't bluff. People feared what he didn't say. By 10:30 a.m., he'd already closed 2 deals and rejected 4 proposals. By noon, he had reshuffled a major board. By 2, he was back in the penthouse working remotely, where silence ruled, and the only footsteps came from one other person in his life. Melvin Davison's world was polished, scheduled, and quiet. He woke up each morning in a bedroom larger than most families' entire homes. A private tutor greeted him by 8 a.m., followed by language lessons, coding labs, and digital ethics discussions before lunch. Every corner of the penthouse reflected money, but little else. His meals were prepared by a rotating chef staff. They greeted him politely, served what was nutritious, and left the room before he finished. Conversations weren't part of the routine. At 12 years old, Melvin wore pressed suits and memorized corporate mission statements. He didn't know the names of the kids in the building across the street. He didn't ride bikes. He reviewed charts. On rare days, he and Prince shared breakfast. But even then, the silence stretched too long. Prince nodded once. Melvin mirrored him, nothing more. There were no weekend ball games, no sudden laughs over burned pancakes. Melvin's life moved like clockwork, flawless, expensive, but empty in the places warmth should live. He had questions he never voiced, about the woman in the photo frame that disappeared one year, about why his father always stood, even during dinner, about what son meant when it wasn't spoken out loud. The housekeepers treated him with perfect respect, but none ever sat beside him. No one asked what scared him. No one asked if he was lonely. His favorite time of day, the 1 hour before bed, when he was allowed to read anything he wanted. That's when he discovered laughter in books. That's when he heard voices that felt human. But even then, he kept the volume low. He had learned early, noise had no place in his father's house. Prince Davison didn't believe in second chances. To him, trust wasn't earned. It was leased, temporarily, and reviewed constantly. His rise hadn't come from connections or inherited privilege. It came from reading people faster than they could read him, from walking away before anyone could betray him, from knowing loyalty faded the moment emotions entered the room. He respected consistency, not affection. At Davison Equity, no employee lasted long if they confused respect with familiarity. Titles changed. Bonuses shifted. But the one rule Prince enforced without exception was this: never make it personal. In his personal life, that same rule stood. He never dated within the company, never introduced a woman to his son, never answered questions about Melvin's mother. The few who tried to get close met a locked door, emotionally and literally. Prince saw emotion as leverage, and he refused to be leveraged. He believed people gave their best when you gave them distance. He didn't do dinner parties. He didn't linger in boardrooms. He didn't send flowers. But he sent lawyers when needed. He had memorized every betrayal that shaped his past. The partner who sold him out in his 20s. The media leak that nearly ruined his first acquisition. The woman who left without a word, leaving only a baby and a file. So Prince adapted. He removed softness from his decisions. Loyalty was a line item. Trust was renewable, never permanent. He had one rule he told every close associate, every assistant, every driver, every advisor. If you ever have to choose between honesty and sparing me, choose honesty. I don't do kindness that hides the truth. This rule kept his empire strong. But it also left one part of his life, Melvin's part, missing something money couldn't replace. 12 years earlier, Prince received a letter, unmarked, no return address. Inside, a birth certificate, hospital records, and a short note. You won, keep the boy. He's yours now. At first, Prince assumed it was fake, a ploy, another desperate reach from someone who wanted access to his money or headlines. But one name on the form hit hard, Nia Brooks, a name he hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. She was once part of his life, briefly, beautiful, clever, sharp. He believed her. Until he didn't. She vanished the same week a multi-billion-dollar merger collapsed due to leaked intel. He blamed her, walked away, closed that chapter, and now, this. Melvin was barely 2 when Prince met him. Chubby cheeks, eyes wide, silent in the arms of a court-appointed guardian. No tears, just stillness. Prince didn't hesitate. He signed every document. No reporters, no press release, no announcements. He didn't do it for sympathy. He didn't even do it for love. He did it out of responsibility. He moved Melvin into the penthouse, installed cameras, hired private security, and staffed the home with experts in child development. But not once did he ask the boy if he was okay. Not once did he explain who he was or why he came. That first night, Prince stood outside the child's door, silent. Melvin slept clutching a rubber giraffe. Prince never told anyone about the feeling that rose in his chest. He buried it fast. He filed the moment under obligation and never looked back. Marquita Dean walked through the glass lobby of Davison Equity with a straight back and a sharp gaze. She didn't rush, didn't fidget, didn't soften her presence to match the silence most carried in that building. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to inspect. The receptionist, used to people waiting quietly or stammering under pressure, simply pointed to the executive elevator when Marquita showed her clearance badge. Few climbed that high in the building without clearance. Even fewer were invited. Marquita needed no invitation. She was sent. Her firm had been contracted by the federal board to perform full audits on private donors, funneling funds through community projects. Prince Davison's name topped the list. His foundation claimed to fund youth tech programs across 4 states, but the numbers didn't sit right. The grant approvals were too clean, the success reports too polished, the timelines off by weeks in some cases. Marquita believed in service, but she didn't believe in perfection. That kind of neatness usually meant someone was scrubbing the floor too hard. By the time she reached the top floor, her file was organized, annotated, and coded by red flags. She didn't knock when she reached the conference room. She walked in, laptop in one hand, credentials in the other. Prince sat at the head of the table, reading a portfolio. He glanced up once. No smile, no greeting. She met his gaze calmly. Marquita Dean, Independent Audit Oversight, will be reviewing your non-profit arm. I'll need your direct cooperation for the next 6 weeks. No pleasantries. No scripted intro. Prince blinked once. Most people stammered when they spoke to him. She didn't even flinch. Sit, he said. She did. 2 days into the audit, Prince regretted agreeing to it, but not for the reasons he expected. Marquita wasn't rude. She wasn't aggressive. She was exact. She didn't raise her voice. She raised facts. At precisely 9 a.m., she entered the private conference room again, laptop open, documents flagged. Prince sat across from her, sipping plain coffee as usual. He expected posturing. Instead, he got a quiet storm of precision. Line item 14 billions, she said, tapping the screen. Reported disbursement says 32,500. The bank record shows 30,000 even. Where's the remaining $2,500? He didn't respond right away. No one had ever spoken to him like that in his own building. She continued, scrolling. Also, there are 2 timestamps showing grant approval before application intake. That's a red flag. And the community center listed here closed down 6 months before the grant was marked active. Prince narrowed his eyes. You're implying fraud. I'm not implying anything, she replied. I'm identifying inconsistencies. You decide what they are. He leaned back, studying her. She didn't blink. Her voice didn't rise. She held the room with stillness, not force. Most auditors ease into confrontation, he said flatly. I'm not most auditors, she replied. I'm here to ask questions. You're supposed to have answers." The pause stretched between them. He was used to people flattering, fearing, or folding. But Marquita didn't fold. She documented. She reviewed. She challenged. She wasn't there to impress his board. She wasn't interested in being liked. And she never once glanced around to see who else was listening. By the end of the meeting, Prince had written a note to himself, "Watch her. Closely." Marquita was reviewing receipts in the sunlit conference room when she heard the quiet creak of the door open behind her. She didn't look up right away. Most staff on that floor moved quietly, like ghosts. She was used to it by now. But then she heard it. Soft footsteps. Smaller, lighter. She glanced up. A boy stood there in a grey polo and navy slacks, holding a book. He had sharp eyes, eyes that watched before they spoke. "Are you lost?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "I live here, kind of." Marquita smiled just slightly, setting her pen down. "You must be Melvin." He nodded. She pushed the receipts aside. "You came to inspect my audit?" "No," he said. "I was just walking by. I've never seen you here before. I'm visiting." "For work?" He looked at the open files, the highlighted sections, the marked-up spreadsheets. "Are you fixing something?" "Maybe," she said, more like checking to make sure nothing's broken. Melvin tilted his head. "Does my dad know you're doing that?" "He does. He agreed to it." The boy seemed to process that. "Then he doesn't let people fix things." Marquita paused. That sentence wasn't casual. It carried something weighty beneath it. "Well," she said, "I'm not here to fix him. Just the numbers." Melvin gave a rare grin. "You talk different." "Different how?" "You don't try to sound nice." She laughed, short, warm, unfiltered. "I try to sound honest. That's enough." He looked at her like he was seeing something rare, something calm. "You want to see my new code?" he asked, pulling his tablet out of his bag. Marquita smiled again, fuller this time. "Only if it runs." He pulled a chair next to hers, showing her the app he built, a game with layered choices and earned points. She listened, asked real questions, even lost a round. And for the first time in weeks, Melvin forgot the room was always too quiet. Prince stood just outside the glass divider, watching the scene unfold in silence. He hadn't intended to stop. He was walking toward the boardroom when he saw Melvin, his Melvin, sitting beside Marquita, animated in a way he rarely was, laughing even, showing her code, pointing to the screen, nodding eagerly when she asked questions most adults never bothered with. Marquita leaned in, attentive, not faking it. She wasn't humoring the boy. She was present. Prince's jaw tightened. Melvin didn't do that with anyone. Not tutors, not family office staff, not even him. And Marquita didn't flinch under Melvin's bursts of excitement or quiet pauses. She moved at his pace, listened without leaning in too far, responded like he was her equal, not someone to be managed. It bothered Prince more than he could name. That kind of connection didn't come from training. It came from something else, something unscripted, and Prince didn't trust what couldn't be measured. He tapped his finger once against the glass, then turned before either of them saw him. Back in his office, he sat down without touching his computer. His thoughts refused to settle. Marquita Dean had come to audit numbers, but she had entered spaces she wasn't assigned to. She'd made his son laugh. She'd questioned his books. And she hadn't asked him for a thing. Prince reached for the file his assistant left earlier. Marquita's credentials, work history, affiliations, everything checked out. No red flags, no weak points. Still, he made a note, redirect her to lower floors next week. She was getting too close. Not to the data, to the boy. The audit was supposed to last 4 weeks. By the end of week 2, Marquita was still there, still methodical, still unbothered by titles, still reviewing every line without apology. Her seat in the executive conference room became a fixture. Her laptop charger stayed plugged in. Her notes, sharp, color-coded, spoke louder than any raised voice. Prince noticed the shift. His evenings grew longer, not out of necessity, but because he didn't want her reviewing his systems without his oversight. Or maybe because her presence, silent, focused, steady, did something to the rhythm of his nights. They barely spoke in the beginning. She reviewed records. He answered only what needed answering. She didn't try to make conversation. She didn't ask personal questions. Yet, something changed the fourth night. She worked late, and the janitorial staff had already passed through. Prince stood by the window, reviewing a board memo, when he heard her yawn. "Don't stay to prove a point," he said without looking up. "I don't. I stay to finish the job." He turned. She was rubbing the back of her neck, not in a dramatic way, just tired. "I'll have another chair brought in," he said. "That one's terrible after 6 hours." She raised an eyebrow. "That's the first non-financial concern I've heard from you." He gave a faint shrug. "I've been watching." She glanced up at him briefly, then back to the report. Figures. That was it. No flirtation, no obvious warmth. But something passed between them, quiet recognition. The next evening she brought coffee from a shop a few blocks away, left his on the corner of the table, black, no sugar, no comment. He drank it without thanks. They worked side by side past 10. Melvin waited until Marquita was alone before approaching her again. He had learned her schedule. She usually arrived by 8:45, settled into her spot in the conference room, and reviewed her files in focused silence. No chatter, no wasted time. But when she saw him at the door, she always paused. "Morning," he said, standing in his school uniform, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Morning," she replied, offering a nod and a rare smile. "Big quiz today?" "Already took it." He stepped in. "I got a 97. "Nice," she said, setting her pen down. "What did you miss?" "One question on historical timelines. I swapped the dates on the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act." "Easy mistake," she said. "You remember the correction." "Now I do," he said. "You make remembering stuff easier." She raised an eyebrow. "How?" "You explain things straight. No extra words." Marquita chuckled. "You're more honest than most adults I know." He smiled at that, proud of the comment. Then his tone dropped slightly. "Do you like working here?" Marquita glanced at the door, then back at him. "It's interesting. That's how I describe my life too," he said, sitting in the chair beside her. Over the next few days, these moments grew. Short chats became daily routines. Melvin started asking questions about her background, where she went to school, what books she liked, if she ever failed anything growing up. She never lied. She admitted to a failed driving test at 16, a failed math quiz at 11, a heartbreak at 23. He listened like her answers mattered more than facts in a textbook. Prince noticed the change. Melvin spoke more during dinner. He asked sharper questions. He smiled in passing more often. But what stood out most, he started sitting across from Marquita in the evenings, reading his own files while she worked. He didn't talk much. He just stayed close. It wasn't planned. Marquita had stayed late again, double-checking foundation records. Melvin had already gone to bed. The sky outside was ink-dark, city lights blinking quietly across the windows. Prince appeared at the doorway around 8:30 p.m. "You haven't eaten," he said. She didn't look up. "I'm used to late meals." I wasn't offering a reminder. I was offering dinner. That made her pause. He stepped aside to reveal a modest spread on the long dining table: grilled chicken, vegetables, rice, and 2 glasses of still water. No wine, no mood lighting, just clean lines and space. "I don't mix work and hospitality," she said. "Then consider it a break. You can critique the seasoning." She raised an eyebrow but stood. "If the chicken's dry, I'm leaving." They sat facing each other. No music played. The only sounds came from silverware meeting porcelain. The air wasn't tense, but it wasn't soft either. Prince didn't try to charm her. He didn't ask about her family or hobbies. He asked one question. "Why this work?" Marquita chewed slowly, then answered. "Because numbers don't lie. People do." He nodded once. "That's what I used to believe." "Used to?" He didn't respond right away. Then, now I believe numbers hide things too. Depends on who's looking. She tilted her head. So what do you do when numbers and people both mislead? I control what I can, he said plainly, and leave the rest alone. Her gaze lingered on him. That's a lonely approach. It works. Does it? Silence, again. This time longer, deeper. Neither moved to change the subject. The air felt different then. Charged, but not dramatic. More like a shift in weight. Something neither had expected. He cleared his plate. The chicken's not dry. She stood. I've had worse. She didn't thank him. He didn't offer dessert. But when she left the table, his eyes followed her longer than necessary. The next morning, Marquita arrived earlier than usual. Prince noticed because she had already claimed her seat by the time he stepped into the conference room. Her laptop was open. Files aligned. Expression neutral. No trace of the previous night. He paused. You didn't log out the dinner hours. She didn't look up. I didn't work during dinner. You stayed afterward. I reviewed notes on my own time. That still counts. She finally met his eyes. Calm, unmoved. It doesn't. Prince didn't like the answer. He sat across from her, fingers interlaced. You don't owe me separation. We're working closely. Lines blur. That's exactly why they shouldn't, she said. The words landed clean. No softness, no edge, just clarity. He studied her, searching for hesitation. You're suggesting distance. I'm stating a boundary. He leaned back. Most people adjust their boundaries when they see opportunity. I don't, she replied. I adjust my work. Prince's jaw tightened slightly. You think I'm testing you? I think power tests people without asking, she said. I prefer to opt out. Silence stretched between them. He wasn't used to being denied access, especially not calmly, especially not by someone who wasn't afraid of consequence. You're welcome here, he said finally. In every sense. She closed her laptop halfway. I'm welcome to do my job. Nothing else was discussed. He exhaled through his nose. You don't trust me. I don't need to, she replied. Trust isn't required for accountability. That did it. Prince stood, circling the table slowly. You've challenged my records, my staff, my time. Now you're limiting conversation. I'm protecting clarity, she said. For you. For me. For Melvin. At his son's name he stopped. You don't get to decide what's good for him, Prince said. Marquita's voice stayed level. Then make sure your choices don't force others to. She gathered her things and stood. We'll continue the audit at 10. She left without waiting for permission. Prince remained where he was, staring at the empty chair. He didn't like being shut out, not because he needed control. The building's front desk rarely called Prince directly, but that morning, his assistant's voice came through with a tension that broke routine. There's a woman here. She said you'd know the name. Nia Brooks. Prince froze. The name hadn't passed his lips in over a decade. He stood without a word and moved to the private elevator. By the time he reached the lobby, Nia was already standing. No hesitation, no insecurity. She wore a structured black coat, heels that didn't slow her step, and a confidence sharpened by time. Her hair was pulled back, her stare unwavering. You remember me, she said flatly. I remember bad investments, he answered. She didn't react. You never asked what happened. You just made assumptions. You disappeared the day my acquisition collapsed, he said. That's not a coincidence. It's a calculation. Nia stepped forward. That was your story. I had a different one, but no room to tell it. He eyed her. Why now? She reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed folder. Because you've been raising someone else's child while holding the wrong grudge. Prince didn't move. What are you talking about? Nia offered the folder. Open it. Then speak. She didn't lower her hand. Didn't blink. The guard nearby shifted uncomfortably, sensing the charge in the air. You could have emailed this, Prince said. You delete emails. You don't delete what's said to your face. Prince took the folder slowly. Nia turned to leave, but paused. I waited 10 years. I gave you space to do the right thing. You filled that space with silence and suspicion. This time, I'm not disappearing." She walked out without looking back. Prince stared at the folder in his hand like it weighed more than paper. Prince didn't open the folder right away. He carried it back to his office, shut the door, and placed it on the desk with deliberate care. He stood there for several seconds, hands resting on the edge, eyes fixed on the seal. Then he broke it. Inside were hospital records, dates, names, a birth log from a private clinic across town, a signed affidavit, and last, a lab report with a letterhead he recognized. DNA comparison. His name appeared once, then again, and beneath it, in bold, a conclusion that refused to soften itself. Probability of paternity, 0%. Prince sat down slowly. He flipped the page, searching for error. Another test followed, same result. A third, ordered years later, confirmed the same finding. His chest tightened, not with anger, but with shock that cut clean. The boy he had raised, the child he brought home, the son he believed came from betrayal, not his. He reached for the phone, stopped, then stood again. He paced once, twice, then returned to the desk and reread the affidavit. Nia's statement was precise, dates lined up, travel records matched. The rival deal, the collapse, the timing, none of it pointed to her. The room felt smaller. A knock came at the door. Marquita stepped in, carrying updated audit files. She paused when she saw his face. "Is this a bad time?" He didn't answer. He slid the folder across the desk. She opened it. She didn't gasp. She didn't sit. She read, carefully, slowly. When she reached the final page, she looked up at him. "This isn't new," she said. "You've had pieces of this before." "I trusted the wrong assumptions," Prince replied. She closed the folder. "This changes everything." "It changes nothing," he said too quickly. "It's fabricated." Marquita studied him, not the documents, not the logic. Him. She said nothing. And that silence said more than any accusation. "This isn't real," Prince said again, firmer this time. "It's a setup." Marquita didn't move. He stood behind his desk, arms crossed, body rigid. The folder sat between them like a crack in the floor. His voice stayed even, but something behind it had started to fray. "She's trying to rewrite history," he said. "She disappeared, left a child, left a mess, and now she shows up with this." He pointed at the lab reports like they were forged currency. Marquita didn't blink. "You think she paid off 3 labs? Fabricated sealed hospital logs? Forged a notarized statement with timestamps from years ago? She's capable. She's consistent," Marquita replied. "You just didn't notice." Prince's expression sharpened. "You're siding with her." "I'm not siding with anyone," she said calmly. "I'm watching how you respond to truth." He walked to the window, breathing slow. The skyline outside blinked, quiet and unaware. "She lied," he muttered. "She was gone when I needed answers." "You never asked," Marquita said. He turned to face her. "What do you know about any of this?" "I know Melvin trusts you," she said. "I know he thinks you hung the stars for him, and I know whatever you do next, he'll remember it." The room fell still again. Prince's shoulders lowered, only slightly. "She left him. She gave him to you," Marquita said. "And you raised him. That part doesn't change. What does is what you do now that you know the truth." He looked at her, eyes clouded. "What would you do?" "I'd stop talking about what she did," she said, "and start asking what kind of man I want to be going forward." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You can throw that folder out, burn it, deny it, but it won't change what it cost you to carry the wrong story for so long." Then she walked out. Prince remained where he stood, staring at the closed door. The office stayed quiet after Marquita left. Prince stood at the window, but he wasn't looking outside. His reflection stared back, impeccably dressed, jaw tight, eyes that once calculated every risk. But now, they struggled to see clearly. He turned from the glass and sat. The folder still lay open on the desk. He didn't touch it again. He wasn't thinking about Nia anymore. Not about her disappearing. Not about how she showed up bold, unshaken, and confident enough to walk through his guarded world like she still had a place in it. No, he was thinking about Melvin, about every moment he thought was built on truth. Bedtime routines, school forms, yearly physicals, weekend coding projects, short drives with silence and shared glances. Had that all been, what? False? Borrowed? He hated the question. Prince reached for his drawer and pulled out a photo. Melvin at 4, sitting on his lap, both of them stiff, but close. He'd never shared the picture with anyone, never framed it. It stayed buried, like every other emotion. His grip tightened. He had ruled companies, handled takeovers, silenced legal threats without raising his voice. But this undid him, not loudly, not dramatically, just in pieces. One thought at a time, one memory at a time, one ache at a time. The worst part wasn't the paperwork, or Nia's calm. The worst part was Marquita's silence, the way she watched him and didn't try to fix it, the way she left without slamming the door. She gave him no fight to win, no voice to overpower. And without that, Prince had no defense. He pressed his fingertips to his eyes. The room didn't spin. It just hollowed. And for the first time in years, Prince didn't know what came next. Prince waited until night to face it again. The folder sat untouched on the edge of his desk since morning. Staff had come and gone, meetings cancelled, calls rerouted. No one questioned him, not because they knew better, but because he'd built a world where no one dared to ask. Now, the city lights blinked in silence behind him. He sat, rolled up his sleeves, and opened the folder with deliberate hands. He didn't skim this time. He read every line. The birth date, the hospital, the attending doctor, all verifiable. He checked the signatures. They were real. He checked the dates. They matched events he had tracked back then. Conferences, meetings, flights. Every piece told a story he had refused to hear. Then he moved to the DNA results. He didn't look for errors anymore. He followed the science, each test run through separate labs, no overlapping names, no shared technicians. All three pointed to the same conclusion. Melvin wasn't his, not biologically. He paused and stared at that word, biologically. It echoed. He set the file down and turned to his computer. He pulled up photos, Melvin at 3 in his first suit, Melvin at 6 holding a toy car, Melvin asleep on the jet, face pressed against Prince's shoulder. He had raised that boy with discipline, with precision, but never once had he told him, "I'm proud of you." He had shown up with money, structure, rules, but not warmth, not softness. Now the truth felt like punishment for everything he hadn't said. He leaned back, eyes heavy. The evidence was real. The boy was real. The lie wasn't Melvin's. The lie was the wall Prince built between himself and a child who never asked to prove anything. Prince opened his private server and pulled up a file labeled Carter Holdings, terminated 112. It had been over a decade since he reviewed it, but that name, Darren Carter, still lived in his mind like a scar. He had convinced himself Carter leaked confidential documents during a merger. The entire collapse of a $600 million deal had been pinned on him. And Nia, they had both vanished within days of each other. That was enough. No trial, no confrontation, just a decision. Prince had severed ties, frozen accounts, buried them both in silence. Now, with the DNA report in one hand and the contract in the other, he read the timeline again. Something didn't match. The files had been accessed from inside his own company's network, 2 full days before Carter's team had access credentials. He blinked. Read it again. The breach hadn't come from Carter. It came from inside Davison Equity. He checked the IT log trail. A name popped up. Hale Thomason. Internal. Quiet. Fired a year later for unrelated misconduct. It had been there all along. The betrayal he built a grudge on didn't belong to Carter. It belonged to someone Prince had never looked twice at. He leaned back slowly, a tight breath caught in his throat. He had spent 10 years carrying a false narrative. He had destroyed partnerships. He had written off people. He had taken in a child believing he was cleaning up someone else's mess. But he was the one who failed to confirm the facts. The deal didn't die because of Carter. It died because Prince assumed, then acted without question. And now, everything that followed, the custody, the cold parenting, the fortress he built around Melvin, it all came from that one lie he told himself. I was betrayed. He hadn't been. He had believed he was. And that belief had cost him more than a merger. It had cost him the one thing no wealth could restore, truth before damage. His memory came in fragments. 12 years ago, a boardroom in Midtown. A 3-hour negotiation that could have made him one of the youngest black CEOs to close a deal of that size. Global strategic legacy building. Prince sat at the head of the table. Darren Carter sat across from him. Sharp suit, steady voice, no sign of pressure. The agreement was clean. The documents were aligned. But the next morning, everything unraveled. A confidential clause, one paragraph, one sentence, leaked to a competitor. The story hit trade publications within hours. Shareholders panicked. Investors pulled back. By noon, the deal was dead. Prince didn't wait for proof. He called Carter directly. You played me, he said coldly. Carter was stunned. What are you talking about? You leaked the clause. I didn't. Prince, I wouldn't risk. But Prince had already disconnected. The pain didn't come from the collapse. It came from Nia leaving that same week. No call. No note. Just gone. In his mind, the betrayal was complete. He cut Carter off from every pipeline, froze their partnership, wrote a legal statement dissolving all ties. He made no space for Carter's defense. He never once asked why. Years later, staff quietly mentioned Carter had moved his family overseas, started fresh. Prince didn't care, or pretended not to. Now, sitting alone in his office, Prince replayed that boardroom moment, not with the certainty he once held, but with shame. He hadn't lost because someone failed him. He lost because he acted on ego instead of evidence, because he let suspicion guide his decisions, because silence was easier than truth. He looked over at the DNA report again. Melvin had nothing to do with any of it. The boy was innocent, but raised in a house built on pride and control, not clarity. Prince buried his face in his hands for a moment, breathing deep. He didn't lose a deal that year. He lost the version of himself who once believed in people. Marquita stood outside Prince's office door the next morning, holding the final audit summary in a sealed envelope. She knocked once and waited. Prince opened the door slowly. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, but who'd done a lot of thinking. Is it finished? He asked. The numbers are clean, she said, handing over the file. No fraud, no missing funds. He took the envelope, but didn't open it. That's not why you came in person, he said. Marquita nodded. I came to say I'm stepping back. Prince's brow tightened. From the audit. From this space. All of it. He didn't move, but the shift in the air was instant. Because of the DNA report? No, she said. Because of what you did with it. He looked at her, silent. You've built your world on walls, she said. Not facts, not people, just walls. And when the truth knocks, you reinforce them instead of letting anything in. I didn't reject the truth, he said. You treated it like an inconvenience, she replied. Like something to fix instead of face. He stepped aside slightly. Melvin asks about you. She nodded once. Tell him I care. And that I left because adults are supposed to make healthy choices. He trusts you. I know, she said, her voice softening. That's why I'm walking away before I let him watch me stay in something that isn't honest. Prince searched her face. You think I'm dishonest. I think you're scared, she said. And until you stop treating control as protection, nothing around you will grow. Not your company, not your son, not your heart. That cut deeper than he expected. She looked at him once more. You want respect. I gave it. You want loyalty. I honored it. But growth? That takes humility, and you haven't reached for that yet. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She turned, walked to the elevator, and didn't look back. Prince watched the doors close. This time, no one had betrayed him. She had simply chosen to leave before he broke more than he already had. Marquita didn't expect to see him. She had just stepped out of a meeting at the downtown community development center when she heard the voice behind her. "Miss Dean?" She turned. Melvin stood near the entryway, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes steady. Not angry, not nervous, just searching. "How did you find me?" she asked gently. "Your name was on the center's website," he said. "You helped them get a grant." She nodded. "I did. I figured you'd still be helping people." She didn't answer that. He took a few steps closer. "You left," he said quietly. No one explained why. Marquita looked at him for a long moment, then gestured toward the bench near the walkway. They sat. "Sometimes," she began, "you leave not because you don't care, but because you do." He frowned. "I don't get it." "I stayed around your dad because I believed I could do good work," she said. "But when the truth came out, he didn't face it. He fought it. I couldn't stay and pretend that didn't matter." Melvin stared at the ground. "But he's always like that. Closed. He doesn't have to stay that way," she said. "But growth is a choice. I couldn't make it for him." He looked up. "Did you leave me too?" Marquita's heart tugged, but she kept her voice even. "No. I would never leave you. But I had to step away from a situation that was starting to teach you the wrong things." "Like what?" "That love means accepting silence, that truth is optional, that dignity should bend just to keep someone else comfortable." He swallowed. "I respect your dad," she added. "He raised you. He built something strong. But I can't be near someone who mistakes control for care." Melvin didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "I still want to see you." "You always can," she said. "But only if your reasons are honest. Not to fix him, not to play in the middle. Just because you want to talk." He nodded slowly. "I do," he said. And she believed him. Prince knocked before entering Melvin's room. He rarely did that. But tonight, he paused at the door until he heard a quiet, "Yeah?" from inside. Melvin sat on his bed, tablet in his lap, headphones resting around his neck. The lights were dim, his expression unreadable. Prince stepped in, clearing his throat. "Can we talk?" Melvin shrugged. "You already are." Prince sat at the edge of the bed. He didn't know where to begin. "I heard you went to see Marquita," he said. Melvin nodded. "Yeah. She gave better answers than you." Prince accepted that without protest. "I haven't been fair to you," he said, voice low. "I let my fears speak louder than the truth." Melvin looked at him. "You think I'm not yours?" Prince swallowed hard. "Biology says one thing, but that doesn't change what we've lived through together." "I didn't ask for that test," Melvin said. "I didn't want to be anyone's evidence." Prince exhaled, hands clasped. "I know." Silence stretched between them. Then Prince added, "I made assumptions about your mother. I made decisions without proof. I didn't ask questions when I should have, and I raised you with more rules than love." Melvin's lip tightened. "You think I didn't notice?" "I think you noticed everything." Another pause. Then, awkwardly, Prince said, "I'm not great at this. Talking, feeling." Melvin didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He just asked, "So why are you trying now?" "Because losing your trust would hurt more than facing the truth," Prince replied. Melvin looked at him closely, then nodded once. "That's the first real thing you've said all week." Prince smiled faintly, unsure if it was relief or pain behind it. "I'll try to get better at saying real things," he said. Melvin reached for his tablet again. "Then start with this. Stop blaming other people. Start fixing what you broke." Prince nodded. Melvin didn't say more, but he didn't ask him to leave either. That was something. A week later, Prince was in the kitchen, hands buried in an unfamiliar task, cracking eggs. The silence wasn't cold this time. It was focused, intentional. He'd watched a tutorial twice, measured everything. It wasn't about the meal. It was about effort. Melvin walked in, backpack slung over one shoulder. He stopped when he saw the stovetop. "You're cooking?" "Trying," Prince replied. Melvin set his bag down. "You could have asked the chef." Prince stirred too quickly, causing a slight splash. "This isn't about convenience. I wanted to make something myself." Melvin didn't tease him. He walked over, looked at the pan and asked, "You need help?" Prince handed him a spoon. "Please." They worked in quiet coordination. Nothing fancy, just eggs, toast, and orange slices. At the table, Melvin took a bite and nodded once. "Not bad." Prince chuckled. High praise from a 12-year-old. They ate a few bites before Melvin said, without looking up, "You're still my dad." Prince froze. Melvin continued, "I don't care what a test says. You raised me. That matters more." Prince's throat tightened. He hadn't prepared for this part. "I haven't always done right by you," he said. Melvin shrugged. "You tried. Not in the best way, but you did." They sat in silence again. But this one felt different. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't tense. "I'm not going anywhere," Melvin said. "But I need to see more than promises." Prince nodded slowly. "You will." They finished breakfast in quiet. No speeches, no dramatic exchanges. Just a boy choosing to stay, and a man realizing he had more to earn than he ever expected. Later that night, Prince stood outside Melvin's room. He didn't knock this time. He just listened. Inside, he heard light tapping. Probably Melvin coding again. The rhythm wasn't rushed. It was steady, focused, familiar. Prince stepped away, moved to his own study, and pulled out a drawer he hadn't opened in years. Inside were fragments, photos, old receipts, a printed copy of Melvin's adoption confirmation, paper that proved legal guardianship, paper he had used to convince himself he was doing the right thing. But none of it explained why Melvin still looked for his approval at dinner. Why Melvin sat close but stayed quiet when Prince was in the room. Why, despite years together, the boy still seemed unsure if love was allowed in the silence between them. Prince sat back in his chair, eyes burning. He had built his life around ownership, assets, systems, deals, titles. But tonight, he understood something no document had ever taught him. Love doesn't come from blood. It comes from how you show up when it's hardest. It comes from burned toast and awkward conversations. From choosing to listen, even when you're uncomfortable. From giving space without making someone beg for it. He walked to Melvin's door and knocked softly. This time, when the boy said, "Yeah?" Prince opened the door, stepped inside, and sat without speaking. Melvin looked over, surprised but not alarmed. "What's up?" he asked. Prince held up an old photo of them, both younger, both still learning each other. "I didn't know what I was doing back then," Prince admitted. "I thought giving you everything meant I'd done my part." Melvin looked at the picture. "You tried. I want to do more than try now." Melvin nodded once. "Okay." Prince didn't press. He stayed seated, and for the first time, he didn't try to control the moment. He just let it grow. Prince Davison sat quietly in the back row of the clinic's counseling room. It wasn't private. It wasn't exclusive. It was held on Saturday mornings in a modest community center. Folding chairs, weak coffee, no titles. He didn't speak the first 2 weeks. He listened to fathers talk about guilt, about absence, about the things they wished they had said. None of them knew who he was. And for once, he liked that. When it was his turn, he said 4 words. I raised him wrong. No one judged him. No one praised him either. They let the silence stretch. Then someone passed him a slip of paper, a reading list. No one-handed solutions. No shortcuts. He took the list home. He started reading. He also started showing up at the same community kitchen where his foundation had donated money for years. This time, he didn't wear a suit. He wore an apron. He washed dishes. He served food. Quietly, no cameras, no speeches, no recognition. His staff was stunned when he rescheduled board meetings for family time. For the first time, fatherhood was not squeezed between contracts. Melvin noticed. They didn't have perfect mornings, but they had consistent ones, and it made all the difference. Prince started helping with projects, not correcting, just being present. He learned to ask questions instead of offer solutions. One afternoon, Melvin said, "You're different lately." Prince nodded. Working on it. Melvin didn't say more. He didn't need to. His trust was returning. One steady act at a time. It took him 3 days to write it. No legal language, no business tone, no attempt to spin the past. Just plain words. Dear Carter family. I believed something without checking the facts. I let my pride guide the story. And in doing so, I damaged more than a deal. I damaged people. He paused after every line, questioning his own sincerity, but he pushed through. I assumed betrayal. I never asked for your side. I never opened a conversation. I responded with silence and punishment, and I see now that I was wrong. He mentioned Nia, her decision to leave, his choice to raise Melvin in a house built on suspicion. Not once did he ask for forgiveness. He knew better. He ended with this: I don't expect anything from you. I only hope my honesty brings something full circle for your peace. You were not the villains in my story. I was the man too afraid to see clearly. He folded the letter, handwrote the address, paid for tracking, but didn't request a signature. Then he walked to the nearest post office and dropped it in the mailbox himself. No assistant, no courier. The moment was his to carry. That night, he told Melvin, sometimes you fix what you can, even if the other person never replies. Melvin didn't ask who it was for. He only nodded, then returned to his reading. Sometimes the best lessons aren't taught, they're shown. Consistency changed everything. Prince didn't become someone else. He didn't start cracking jokes or playing catch in the hallway, but he became present. He no longer answered emails during breakfast. He asked how Melvin slept and waited for a real answer. He started showing up at school presentations, not to sit in the back row, but to cheer quietly from the middle. He offered help with projects, not corrections. And when Melvin said he needed space, Prince gave it without question. One Sunday, they took a walk together, no agenda, no plan. I still remember the day you came to get me, Melvin said out of nowhere. Prince stopped walking. I didn't understand what was happening, the boy continued, but you didn't look scared. Just sure. Prince cleared his throat. I wasn't sure. I just didn't want to look weak. Melvin gave a small smile. You didn't, but you didn't look warm either. Prince nodded. That's fair. They kept walking. Later that night, Prince left a note on Melvin's desk. You made me better. Whether I knew it or not, Melvin kept that note tucked behind his bookshelf. He didn't say anything about it, but he read it often. What changed between them wasn't loud. It was steady, and in Prince's world, steady was the most radical change of all. Marquita stood by the community center window, watching Prince serve trays of food to a group of kids at a weekend coding program. He moved without flash, no team around him, no branded gear. Just a quiet man in rolled-up sleeves doing what needed to be done. She stayed behind the scenes. She'd been asked to return as an advisor for the new program rollout. She agreed, but with boundaries. No handshakes, no "we're all good now" assumptions. She didn't trust gestures. She trusted habits, and habits took time. She read about the letter to the Carter family, only because the recipient's daughter had mentioned it in passing. She didn't ask for details. She heard from Melvin occasionally. He sounded lighter, not glowing, but grounded. She took that as a sign of change, but not a conclusion. One afternoon, she passed Prince in the hallway. He nodded politely. She returned the gesture but kept walking. Later, he sent a message to her office. No pressure, no expectation, just letting you know, I'm still working. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete it either. Marquita knew this. Apologies without change were noise. She wasn't interested in being impressed. She was watching to see if growth had roots, or if it was just another polished surface. For now, distance was the right place. Prince didn't send flowers. He didn't write long messages. He knew that wouldn't work. But he did send a text at 6:42 a.m., short, clear and respectful. "There's a new exhibit at the Cultural History Center. Thought of you. No pressure. Let me know if you'd want to go." Marquita read it while sipping tea on her porch. She didn't smile. She didn't scoff. She simply set the phone down and continued reading her morning paper. 3 hours later, she responded, "Thanks for thinking of me. I'm not looking to blur lines. Glad you're doing well." That was it. Prince read her reply twice, then once more. It wasn't cold. It wasn't rude. It was final. He typed a draft. "I understand. I miss our conversations." He deleted it, then tried another. "I respect your decision." Too passive. Eventually he sent nothing. Instead, he adjusted, gave her space. Marquita didn't expect pursuit. She expected accountability. Romance had never been her currency. Not flattery, not gifts, not intentions sweetened with effort after the damage was done. She had spent years earning her peace. She wouldn't trade it for a version of affection that still came on his terms. Prince understood that, slowly, so he showed restraint. No repeated texts, no sudden appearances, no assumptions. He focused on his work, his son, and the slow inner shift that didn't require an audience. Marquita noticed his silence, but she didn't fill it. She had boundaries for a reason. She knew men who cleaned up well and spoke softer after a fall. But she also knew change that wasn't tested couldn't be trusted. And Prince's changes hadn't been tested yet, not by success, not by ego, not by her. So she stayed where she was, not bitter, not hopeful, just aware. The non-profit policy conference wasn't large, but it attracted the right rooms, people who shaped city budgets, wrote legislation, and built programs that actually reached real lives. Marquita had been scheduled to speak on ethics and community trust in grant deployment. She arrived 15 minutes early, reviewed her notes, and took her place near the left aisle of the front row. She didn't expect to see him. But when the host introduced the next speaker, Prince Davison, CEO of Davison Equity and lead donor of the STEM Bridge Initiative, she looked up, and there he was, clean cut, calm, no suit this time, just a pressed button-down, slacks, no tie. He didn't scan the room, didn't look for her. He walked to the podium and began his presentation with data, not charm. He spoke about the evolution of donor responsibility, how foundations needed external audits, how his own mistakes taught him the difference between contribution and commitment. He didn't mention Marquita, didn't allude to her, but every sentence echoed things she once said, words she thought he dismissed. After the panel, Marquita slipped out quietly, but in the hallway near the elevators, their paths crossed. He stopped. "So, now we both do conferences," he said lightly. She nodded. "Apparently, you left before the Q&A. I'd heard what I needed." He didn't press. "You look well," he said. "I am." They stood there in silence, not awkward, but intentional. "I'm not here to chase anything," he added. "Just wanted to say, I admire the work you still do. That hasn't changed." Marquita gave a short nod. "Appreciate that." He gestured toward the hallway. "I'll let you go. Take care." "You too," she said. She watched him walk away without looking back. No games, no script. Still, she didn't follow. She didn't need to. He'd learned to walk without expecting her to trail behind. That was new. That was progress. But progress still wasn't trust. "Do you still talk to her?" Melvin asked one evening as Prince closed his laptop. Prince looked up slowly. "Marquita?" Melvin nodded. "Yeah, not much." "Why?" Prince leaned back. "Because some people need space, and I didn't earn more than that yet." Melvin stared at him. "But you want to?" Prince didn't answer right away. "Yes, I'd like to have a conversation again. But only if she wants it." Melvin fidgeted. "She checks in on me. Not often, but enough." Prince smiled slightly. "That sounds like her." "She listens," Melvin added. "Even when I don't say much." Prince nodded. I know. Melvin hesitated. She told me not to get caught in the middle, but I think maybe people get scared of trying again because they think it has to be perfect this time. Prince studied him. Who told you that? Melvin shrugged. I just figured. You both like quiet, but your silences are different. Hers keeps her calm. Yours used to keep people out. Prince was silent for a beat. I'm working on that. A few days later, Marquita received a package. Inside, a book on youth education reform, a topic they'd once debated fiercely. Tucked inside was a note in Melvin's handwriting. He's learning to listen now. I think you'd like this one. Marquita read the note twice. She knew what it was. A nudge. A gentle bridge. Not pressure, just a signal. She didn't ignore it, but she didn't respond either. Instead, she added the book to her reading list. That week, she brought it to the center and placed it on her desk. Visible. Melvin visited 2 days later. He smiled when he saw it. Subtle, he said. I'm not promising anything, she replied. I know. But you're still open. Careful, kid, she said, cracking a small smile. You're starting to sound like someone who reads between the lines. Melvin grinned. I learned from the best. She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. The invitation came in the simplest form. A handwritten note, folded once. Left on the front desk at the community center with her name on it. Saturday, 6. No title, no pitch. Just food and honesty. If you decide to come, I'll be at La Vida on 9th. If not, I'll still be grateful for everything you gave me without asking for anything back. She held the note for a long time. It wasn't the restaurant that mattered. It wasn't the timing. It was the tone. No pressure, no plea, no ego. Just a request from a man who no longer expected applause. At 5:58 p.m. that Saturday, Marquita walked into the restaurant. He stood when he saw her, then sat only after she did. He didn't reach across the table. Didn't try to charm her. He let her order first. Waited until their drinks arrived before speaking. I'm not here to make speeches, he said. Good, she replied. I don't reward those. He smiled faintly. I just wanted to sit with you in a room without anything broken between us. She folded her hands. Nothing between us was ever broken. What was broken was around us. And you're the one who had to clean it. I've tried. I know. They ate in a calm rhythm. Shared glances. Shared quiet. No talk of the past. No promises of the future. Just a shared table, and the simple act of showing up without an agenda. As they stood to leave, he offered to walk her to her car. She agreed. At the door, she turned to him. This isn't forgiveness, she said. I know. This isn't an open door. I understand. She held his gaze. But it's a seat at the table, and you didn't force your way into it. He nodded once. I'll take it. She got in her car. He watched her drive off. No illusions, no victory. Just something slow and real beginning again. The second dinner was her idea, but barely. Marquita sent a message, short and neutral. You mentioned liking quiet places. There's a spot near the museum. Thursday, 7? Prince replied within the hour. I'll be there. She arrived on time. No makeup beyond lip balm, navy slacks, ivory blouse. She wasn't dressing for charm. Prince was already seated, not on his phone, just watching the front door with a steady gaze that didn't expect. Their table sat near a window. Low lighting, no music, just the clink of silverware and the soft hum of conversations around them. He stood when she approached, pulled out her chair. She didn't thank him, but she noticed. Menus arrived. They placed their orders without small talk. It wasn't awkward. It was careful, measured. I don't have a pitch, he said, settling back in his chair. And I don't want a second chance if you think that's what this is. It's not, she replied. It's a meal. We're allowed that. He nodded. They spoke about work. Briefly, about Melvin, longer, about the community center's new mentorship program. No compliments, no wandering eyes. Just two people revisiting a conversation they'd left unfinished months ago. Halfway through the meal, Marquita said, "You don't need to impress me. I'm not trying to." "Good." He smiled a little. "But I wanted to show you that I've learned how to sit with people now, without controlling the room. That's worth more than effort with flowers." Their meals came. They ate, slowly. No rush, no pressure, no trying to fix anything. That alone made it feel different, and better. After the plates were cleared and dessert was politely declined, Prince folded his hands. "I never apologize properly," he said. "I don't mean for the foundation drama. I mean for how I handled you." Marquita sipped her water. "Go on." "I questioned your motives because they didn't match my framework. I judged your clarity as ambition, and I treated your boundaries like obstacles instead of self-respect." She said nothing. "I thought being careful made me strong, but really it made me distant." Still no interruption. She let him speak. "I regret assuming the worst of you just because you didn't flatter me." He paused. "I regret never protecting the space between us as something worth earning, not owning." Another pause. "I regret letting silence say what I was too proud to." Marquita leaned back, arms crossed. Not defensive, just assessing. "You've said all this before," she said, "in different ways. What makes tonight different?" He didn't flinch. "Because I'm not saying it to win you," he answered. "I'm saying it because I know it's the truth, and if you never sit at another table with me again, I'll still be better for having said it out loud." She studied him. "I'm not interested in apology as performance," she said. "I know," he replied. "I'm not offering performance, I'm offering clarity." She nodded once. That mattered. The words weren't dramatic, but they were specific. They didn't aim for pity. They didn't push for forgiveness. They stood on their own. And in that moment, she didn't soften. She listened. That was enough. She didn't speak immediately after his admissions. The table remained still. Finally, Marquita reached for her glass, took a sip, then set it down gently. "You asked why trust is hard for me," she said. "It's not about one event. It's about patterns." Prince sat quietly, giving her space. "I was raised around people who called silence strength, who called withholding information a kind of love, who thought loyalty meant staying, even when dignity was bleeding out." He didn't interrupt. "I learned early that being a woman with standards means being called difficult. That being measured means being accused of being cold. And when you're black, professional, and direct, people put all sorts of labels on that." Her voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. "I gave people room to prove themselves for years, until I realized I was always the one doing the forgiving, always the one making the peace." She looked up. "I stopped extending access without reason, not because I'm bitter, but because I value peace more than potential." Prince nodded once. "I understand." "No," she said. "You don't. But you're trying. And that's better than pretending to." She leaned forward slightly. "I don't need to be rescued. I don't need someone to complete me. I need someone who can sit in the quiet without trying to fill it with promises they can't keep." He nodded again. "And that's why I left," she said. "Not because of one event, but because I refuse to stay in places that confuse effort with entitlement." There was nothing emotional in her delivery, no weighty pause, no attempt to land the words as wounds. Just clarity. Prince looked down, breathed out slowly. "I'm grateful you told me that." "I didn't say it for you," she replied. "I know." She picked up her purse. "Let's go. I've said what I needed." Outside the restaurant, the air was cool. A soft wind pushed down the quiet block. Street lamps buzzed, and traffic was light. They walked side by side toward her car, neither in a rush, neither expecting anything more from the evening. At the passenger side door, Marquita paused. Prince stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets. "This was a good dinner," she said. "No pretense." "Thank you for sharing space with me," he replied. She looked at him. Long enough for the silence to carry meaning, but not long enough to invite anything further. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. Not for a kiss, but for a hug. Brief, solid, still. He didn't squeeze tighter than necessary. He didn't linger. She stepped back first. Prince exhaled through his nose. "I'm not asking for anything else." "I know," she said. "I'll keep showing up the same way, with or without an answer." She nodded. "That's the only way I'd even consider one." He opened her car door. She got in, closed it softly. Through the window, he said one last thing. "You've never been hard to read. You've just always been clear. I see that now." She nodded once, then drove off. No promise for a next time, but no barrier either. And in a world full of shortcuts and noise, a woman stepping into her car without needing to be convinced. That was the beginning of something real. The invitation came tucked in a light blue envelope, addressed in Melvin's handwriting. "You're invited to Ridgeview Middle's Spring Innovation Showcase. Date, Thursday. Time, 6:30 p.m. He didn't say more. Prince arrived early, not in a driver's car, not in his tailored boardroom suits. Just slacks, a clean shirt, and a blazer with no branding. The school auditorium buzzed with parents and students. Folding chairs, posters on trifold boards, nervous laughter. He scanned the room, and there she was. Marquita stood near the back, speaking to one of the teachers. She was dressed simply, her hair pulled back, holding a program in her left hand. When she turned and saw him, their eyes met. No wave, no smile, just acknowledgement. When it came time to sit, Prince chose a seat 2 rows behind Melvin's assigned presentation station. Marquita joined him, no fanfare. "No good to see you." They simply sat, together. Melvin spotted them both from across the room and gave a small nod. Nothing dramatic, but a hint of relief softened his shoulders. The event began with an introduction from the principal, followed by a student-led showcase. One by one, children stood to explain their projects, apps, models, science demonstrations. When Melvin's turn came, he stood calmly beside his table and spoke clearly. "My project is called Bridge Back, a mentorship app that connects older students to younger ones for emotional support and academic help. It works on a private server. I built it because I think sometimes talking to someone a little older, but not too old, helps you feel less alone." Prince swallowed. Marquita didn't glance over. Melvin continued, answering questions from the audience with maturity well beyond his years. After the applause, he walked straight to them. "You both came," he said, looking between them. Prince nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." Marquita added, "You were clear, calm and prepared. That matters." Melvin smiled. "Thanks." He stepped aside to speak with a classmate. Prince and Marquita stayed seated, still not speaking to each other, but not leaving either. Sometimes presence is the message, and both of them had shown up. The showcase included a closing session with a brief panel discussion featuring parents and professionals from the school's donor and advisory community. Marquita had been listed as one of the speakers, something arranged weeks earlier. Prince had known, but never asked her about it. When her name was called, she stood confidently and walked to the mic without glancing his way. She didn't need notes. She didn't need praise. She stood calmly in front of students, teachers, and families. "I'm not here as a donor," she began. "I'm here as someone who believes in structure and in accountability inside that structure." She paused. "Leadership isn't about money. It's not about how loud you are. It's about how you respond when someone challenges you with truth." She scanned the room, not dramatically, just enough to connect. "I've worked in places where power hid behind formality, where image outweighed responsibility, and I've also worked with people who learned to lead better after being wrong." She let that sit. "Tonight, we celebrate students. But let's be clear, your character will carry you further than any resume." Heads nodded across the room. "Say what you mean. Keep your word. Let people leave if they need to, and do the work whether they're watching or not." She gave a respectful nod and stepped down. Polite applause followed. Prince stood back, hands in his pockets, watching her. There was no pride in his posture, just respect. She didn't perform. She instructed, and she had done it without asking permission or softening her message. Later, A teacher approached Marquita to thank her. "You spoke like they mattered," the woman said. "They do," Marquita replied. Prince didn't interrupt the moment. He stayed by the door, and for the first time he realized the value of giving someone else the microphone and letting them lead the room with nothing but truth. He had once feared voices like hers. Now, he knew they were the only ones worth hearing. The hallway was still full when he approached her. Marquita was speaking to two teachers, both clearly engaged in conversation. Prince waited until they nodded and stepped aside. She looked at him, expression unreadable. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't wait for privacy. "I want to say this clearly," he said. "That speech wasn't good. It was necessary." A few heads turned nearby. Marquita didn't flinch. "Thank you," she said simply. He continued, "You've always had clarity. I used to find that threatening. Now I find it grounding." "You've said this before," she replied. "Cool but not dismissive. Not like this," he said. "Not in public, not without conditions." That made her pause. "I told Melvin once that I'd stop talking to prove things and start listening instead," he added. "But tonight it felt important to say this out loud. You earned every word of respect I withheld when it mattered most." She nodded. "I heard you." Others were still nearby, listening subtly. Prince didn't care. "People assume leadership means having all the answers," he said. "But what I've learned from you is that real leadership is about what you do after you've been wrong." Someone from the board approached, ready to shake Prince's hand. He held up a finger. "Not done." The man stepped back. Marquita tilted her head. "That part, putting things down to finish the conversation, that's new." "I've had help," he said, "from two people who taught me how to slow down. One of them is standing in front of me." She didn't blush. She didn't glow. She just stood there, calm as ever, absorbing it without being moved too quickly. "Thank you, Prince," she said. He nodded once. "Thank you, Marquita," and for the first time it wasn't awkward. It was earned. The parking lot had cleared out. A few parents lingered near the back gate, chatting as kids ran through grass in half-buttoned uniforms. Marquita walked to her car with her keys in hand. Prince followed a few steps behind, but didn't call out. She turned just before reaching her door. "Do you still drink that awful black coffee?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "Unfortunately, yes. There's a spot 2 blocks from here. They stay open late." He paused. "You're inviting me?" "I'm offering a beverage. Don't confuse it." He smiled. "I won't." She didn't soften. One conversation. No expectations. He raised his hands slightly. One cup. No pressure. They stood in that limbo space, where past wounds still echoed, but no longer ruled. She unlocked her door. "You following me or meeting there?" "I'll follow." She gave him a nod and got in. As he walked to his own car, he didn't rush. He didn't overthink. There was no dramatic music, no staged pause. Just a man who'd been broken, rebuilt, and now invited, not chased, into a space he didn't deserve, but had worked for. And a woman who wasn't rewarding him. She was testing consistency, the kind that outlasts grand gestures. By the time they reached the coffee shop, she was already seated, drink in hand. He joined her. They spoke lightly, about Melvin, about work, about community programs. She laughed once. He smiled often. And when the night ended, she stood first. "We'll see," she said, not offering anything else. "I'll keep showing up," he replied. She nodded. That was enough. There was no grand ceremony, no media coverage, no gold-trimmed invitations or floral arches. Prince and Marquita were married in a modest garden behind a non-profit-owned arts center in Bronzeville, Chicago. 20 guests. Folding chairs. A soft breeze. No photographers. Just friends, community partners, and Melvin, standing tall between them. They exchanged vows written in quiet language. Honesty, boundaries, presence, respect. No promises of perfection. Just the decision to choose each other with open eyes and steady hands. Marquita wore a simple gown with a long sleeve and a smooth finish. Prince wore a charcoal grey suit, no tie. There was no audience to impress. There was only peace. And when it was done, they didn't pose. They didn't perform. They greeted guests, shared cake, walked home without a driver. A man who had once believed love was leverage, and a woman who proved it never had to be. It happened at a community youth event 2 months after the wedding. Melvin was presenting a demo of a new tool he'd helped design, a digital forum for students to anonymously submit mental health concerns and receive peer-guided support. Marquita watched from the side of the stage. Prince stood near the front row, arms folded, proud but reserved. When Melvin finished the demo, a young boy from the crowd asked, "Who helped you make this?" Melvin paused for a second, then glanced toward the front. "My dad," he said clearly. "He's right there." Every sound dropped for a moment. Prince's eyes widened slightly, his jaw tightening, not out of pride, but shock. Melvin didn't over-explain, didn't look back for approval. He just said it like it had always been true, because maybe, quietly, it had. After the event, Prince didn't bring it up. He didn't need to. But later that night, Melvin passed by his study and said, "Just thought you should know. I meant it." Prince didn't respond right away. He just nodded and whispered, "Thank you." And that was enough. The press release was short. Davison Equity commits $4 million to support the Rise Fund, targeting Black women entrepreneurs building community-based solutions in underserved neighborhoods. The grant is made in honor of Marquita Dean Davison for her lifetime commitment to financial clarity, dignity, and integrity. Marquita didn't ask for it. She didn't even know he was planning it. When the foundation's lead strategist called to confirm the naming permission, she was already looking at the announcement online. Prince came home late that night. She was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, phone face up on the counter. "You did this without asking." "I did. You put my name on it. Because you earned it." She didn't smile. "You know I don't do gestures." "This isn't a gesture," he said. "It's a correction." He stepped closer. "Every time someone opens a business with that fund, your name will remind them that structure can come with truth. That leadership can come without noise." She stared at him for a long moment, then said, "Next time, ask." He nodded. "Next time, I will." She didn't soften, but she didn't stop him when he leaned in and kissed her forehead. The school held a parents' open house for student mentors. Melvin had just started working with younger kids through a tech partnership Marquita helped launch. He guided 2 third-graders down the hallway, explaining how their tablet stations would work. His voice was calm, steady, clear. Marquita and Prince followed a few steps behind. No matching outfits, no linked arms, just side-by-side movement, comfortable and familiar. As they reached the end of the hall, Melvin turned back briefly. "Meet me in room 3, he called. "And don't get lost." Then he ran ahead. Marquita chuckled softly. Prince smiled. They continued walking slowly, passing murals painted by students, walls filled with community photos. She glanced sideways. "We didn't force this," she said. He nodded. "No," she finished. "We earned it." They walked in silence for a few more seconds before stopping outside room 3. Inside, Melvin stood proudly, pointing at his students' progress. He belonged there. So did they. To everyone listening, this story wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. It wasn't about getting it right the first time. It was about showing up again with humility, clarity, and no agenda. Too often, we confuse love with noise. But the strongest love doesn't need to shout. It stays. It listens. It repairs. Prince didn't win Marquita back with money. He didn't win Melvin's heart through title or power. He earned them through correction, through action, through the kind of consistency that outlasts apologies. So if you've ever felt too broken to be trusted again, or too guarded to open your heart, remember this: you don't have to be perfect to deserve peace. You just have to be honest enough to grow. And to anyone holding on to regret, there's still time. It's not too late to become someone worth staying for. So, dear God, thank you for second chances. Thank you for the quiet strength you give us to change, not for applause, but for healing. For every heart listening right now, I pray, may pride never silence truth. May regret never stop growth. And may the people we've hurt find healing, whether or not we're there to witness it. Help us love with clarity. Help us lead with humility. And help us recognize the value of those who choose to walk beside us, not because they have to, but because they see something in us worth choosing. Where there's pain, bring peace. Where there's distance, bring understanding. And where there's silence, remind us that showing up with integrity speaks louder than anything we say. Amen. What did this story teach you about love, repair, and accountability? Have you ever had to grow before being welcomed back? Drop your thoughts below. Share this with someone who still believes in second chances and knows that respect, not pressure, is the real proof of love. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Mr. Victor Storytime for more powerful stories that heal and build.